This is the second tutorial on absorption costing and it is taken from June 2011, and the question is Baby Toys Limited, which produces and sells plastic toys in a factory located in Bangor, County Down, and the production is subdivided into operations, production and assembly. The following information is available: machine hours and store issue notes for each of the departments. The following financial information has been summarised in Table 1. Complete the table and show the analysis of production overheads and apportionment of overheads for Baby Toys Limited. First of all, you need again to go back to the steps which are in your book, and you need to have learnt these steps so that you know what is completed and where do you have to start in your question. Whenever we look at this question, we will notice that step 1 has been completed because all the direct costs have been allocated. Step 2 has also been completed for you, and also has step 3, the totals of each department. So we are coming in at step 4, and step 4 is where you're closing down the storeroom and moving the total costs over to the other departments. So the total costs in the storeroom is 10,000. That is going to be taken away and brought over. How are you going to bring it over? They've told you that we're going to use store issue notes, of which 8,000 were sent to production and 2,000 was sent to assembly. The total is 10,000. So we have to calculate that now, and they will give you space to calculate it, but I'm going to calculate it at the bottom of this page. So the total cost of the storeroom is 10,000. We're using store issue notes, of which there are a total of 10,000. So you divide that into your £10,000, which tells you that one note is worth £1. So the storeroom issued 8,000 notes to production. So how much do you bring into production? 8,000 notes multiplied by 1,000 is £8,000. They gave 2,000 notes to assembly. 2,000 multiplied by £1 is 2,000. So it is a total. So 8,000 goes to production and 2,000 to assembly. Your total remains the same. Now you have to calculate step 5, and step 5 is where you take the old total and you add in the new total. So the storeroom has now disappeared. Assembly, the costs were 30,000 and you brought over 2,000 from the storeroom, so it's now £32,000. Production, it was 40 and you brought over 8,000, so it's now £48,000. And the grand total remains the same. Total costs of running the entire business is 80,000. So that is a very short question, and you got 7 marks for doing that, simply because steps 1, 2 and 3 were done. You had to only do step 4 and step 5 in this question. So that is question 1A, 7 marks. Okay, question 1B now. Calculate table 2 to show the appropriate rate of overhead recovery for the production department and assembly. So you have to complete this box and be careful what goes on each lines, because they can mix it up for you. So on the first line goes in the total overheads of each department, where you will get from your table 48 and 32. So you write that in. The total costs of each department, 48,000 and 32,000. On the next line you put in your machine hours, and you take that from the table, and in the table they tell you the machine hours are 80,000 for production and 80,000 for assembly. So you write those in. Now remember, the total overheads are at the top. They could be at the bottom. You have to be careful. They could have the hours at the top and the overheads at the bottom. But here the overheads are at the top, so your money divided by hours, 48,000 divided by 80,000. Be careful with your calculator. So put into your calculator £48,000 divided by 80,000, and that gives you 0.6, which is 60p. For assembly, £32,000 divided by 80,000 hours gives you 0.4, which is 0.40p. And you get 6 marks for calculating that. The next question is a little bit of break-even brought in. It's a revision of break-even. The management team in the business are planning to sell 2 products, walkie-talkie phone devices and speaking clocks, and they give you information regarding each. What their forecasted sales are, what they hope to sell, what the fixed costs of making that product are, what the selling price for each product is, and what the variable cost is. What you're asked to do is to calculate the number of walkie-talkies that must be sold in order to break even. And for this you need to have learned the break-even formula, which is fixed costs divided by contribution per unit. And you know your contribution per unit is your selling price minus your variable costs. So let's work that out for the walkie-talkies. In the walkie-talkies, the fixed costs are 10,000, so you put that at the top line. Now in the bottom line, we have got our selling price and we've got our variable costs. So you have to work this out first. So the selling price is £5 minus the variable cost of £2.50, which means it's £2.50. So you put into your calculator 10,000 divided by £2.50, and that tells you how many units must be produced to break even, and the answer is 4,000 units. You have to do the same now for the other product, which is the speaking clock. So again, your formula, fixed costs divided by contribution per unit. For the speaking clock, the fixed costs for the speaking clock is £15,000. To work out your contribution per unit, your selling price is £10, your variable cost is 5, 10 minus 5, your contribution per unit is £5. So 15,000 divided by 5 is 3,000 units. And you get 3 marks for that. The next question is a little bit more difficult, and you have a little bit more working out to do, because they've says, based on the contribution per unit for each product, calculate the total additional contribution that would arise if Baby Toys Limited had production levels of 3,000 walkie-talkies and 7,000 speaking clocks. At the moment they've give you information for that business based on old figures. They have told you that they forecast to sell 5,000 walkie-talkies and 5,000 speaking clocks. However, they are now telling you that they are revising that and that the production will be 3,000 and 7,000. So you have to work out what additional contribution will come into the business, and you have a bit of working out to do in that. So the first thing that you have to work out is your current total contribution. Okay, so for the phones, currently they are planning to sell 5,000 from the table. The contribution per unit is £2.50, so that gives you a total, so you put that into your calculator, 5,000 multiplied by £2.50 for each. Their total contribution is 12,500. Now let's work it out for the clock. For the clock, they plan to sell 5,000. The contribution per unit is £5. 5,000 multiplied by £5 is 25,000. So the total contribution so far, add the two together, 37,500. That's based on these sales figures here. But now we have to do our revised contribution. So let's have a look at the phone. Now they say that they are planning to sell 3,000 walkie-talkie phones. So instead of 5,000, it's 3,000. multiply by £2.50, which will give us a revised contribution for the phone of 7,500. For the clock, they're telling you that they are revising it to 7,000. The contribution per unit stays the same, £5. 7,000 multiplied by £5 is 35,000. Add the two of them together and you get 42,500. So this is the old total contribution. This is the revised contribution. You take one away from the other to get the total. So 42,500 minus 37,500 gives us a revised contribution of £5,000. And that gets you 5 marks.